The rain fell hard on the colony town of Orland 5, drenching the streets in cold water. It was late at night, and most people were inside, warm and safe. But Darren, a young engineer, was still out, walking home from his shift at the repair docks. His jacket was soaked, and he cursed himself for forgetting an umbrella. As he passed by an old supply depot, something caught his eye, a figure curled up near the crates. At first, he thought it was a trick of the dim streetlights, but as he stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a girl. She was thin, too thin, and her strange violet-tinted skin glowed faintly under the rain. Her hair, dark and tangled, stuck to her face, and her arms hugged her knees tightly, as if trying to make herself smaller. She was shivering badly. Darren hesitated. He had seen aliens before. Humans lived alongside many species in the galaxy, but something about this girl was different. She wasn't just lost. She was starving. He crouched down carefully, making sure not to startle her. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle. "Are you okay?" The girl flinched, her golden eyes snapping open. Fear filled them. She tried to push herself back against the crate, her weak arms trembling. Darren raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you," he promised. "You look cold and hungry." Her eyes darted to his face, then to his bag. He realized what she was looking at, the food he carried. Without another word, he unwrapped the small package he had bought on his way home. It wasn't much, just a warm bread roll and a protein bar, but to someone starving, it might as well have been a feast. He held it out. "Here, eat." The girl didn't move at first. Her body was stiff, her fingers gripping her torn clothing. Was she scared of being tricked? Or maybe she had been chased before, hurt before. Darren softened his voice. "It's okay. No one's going to take it from you." Slowly, very slowly, she reached out with 4 delicate fingers and took the bread. She sniffed it first, like an animal unsure if the food was safe. Then, in a blink, she stuffed it into her mouth. Darren watched as she ate desperately, hurriedly, as if she expected someone to steal it away. He frowned. How long had she gone without food? She coughed a little from eating too fast, and he quickly pulled out a small water bottle. "Here, drink." This time, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed the bottle, spilling some in her rush. She gulped the water down in heavy swallows, her body shaking. Darren didn't know who she was. He didn't know where she had come from or why she was alone. But he knew one thing for sure. She needed help. When the girl finished eating, she sat back, still watching him with cautious eyes. She licked the last crumbs from her fingers. Darren smiled slightly. At least she wasn't shaking anymore. He glanced around. The streets were empty, but they wouldn't be forever. If someone found her out here, they might not be as kind. "You can't stay here," he said. The girl stiffened. Her shoulders tensed, as if ready to run. Darren sighed. "Look, I'm not going to force you, but it's raining, and it's cold. I live nearby." He pointed down the road. "You can come with me, just for tonight. Get warm. Get some real food." The girl stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain kept falling, tapping softly against the crates. Then, finally, she gave a small nod. Darren exhaled in relief. "All right," he said, standing up. "Let's go." She moved slowly, her body weak, but she followed him. As they walked toward his home, Darren glanced at her again. He still didn't know her name or why she was here, but he had a feeling. This night was just the beginning of something much bigger. Darren led the girl through the empty streets of Orland 5, his footsteps splashing in the shallow puddles. The rain had eased a little, but the cold still clung to the air. The girl walked behind him, silent and cautious, her golden eyes flicking around like she expected danger at any moment. Darren kept his pace slow, not wanting to scare her. She looked exhausted, every step unsteady, but she didn't ask for help. pride or fear. He couldn't tell. After a few more turns, they reached his small home. It wasn't much, just a simple one-room living space above his repair shop. The outside was plain, the door old but sturdy. He glanced at the girl. She was staring at the door, her body stiff. Was she afraid to enter? Darren sighed and opened it. It's not fancy, but it's dry. Come in. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. A warm place. The room was warm and simple, a bed pushed against the wall, a small table, and a kitchen in the corner. Tools and spare parts were scattered around, showing that Darren was used to working late. The girl stopped near the entrance, standing awkwardly. Her clothes were still wet and torn, and her bare feet left small water spots on the floor. Darren grabbed a clean towel and held it out. Here, dry yourself. She looked at the towel, then at him, as if unsure what to do. Finally, she took it and rubbed it over her arms and face. Darren moved to the small kitchen, opening a cabinet. You're still hungry, right? The girl didn't answer, but he didn't need one. He pulled out a packet of soup and poured it into a metal pot. The warm scent of broth filled the air as it heated. He glanced back at her. She was watching him closely, her eyes full of curiosity. You ever had human food before? He asked. She shook her head. Darren smiled a little. Well, I hope you like it. When the soup was ready, he placed a bowl on the table. Come, eat. She hesitated again, then slowly walked over. Her movements were careful, as if she was afraid of doing something wrong. She picked up the spoon with her 4 fingers, studying it before taking a small sip. Her golden eyes widened. Darren chuckled. Good. She nodded quickly and took another sip, then another. Soon, she was eating faster, hungrily, as if she was afraid the food would disappear. Darren frowned. How long had she been starving? You don't have to rush, he said gently. No one's taking it from you. She slowed down, but only a little. She finished the soup quickly, then placed the spoon down with a small clink. Darren saw her glance at the pot, still half full. He pushed it toward her. Go ahead. Her eyes widened again, but she didn't refuse. She poured more soup into her bowl and continued eating. A name. As she ate, Darren leaned back in his chair. So, you got a name. The girl paused. She looked down at her bowl, her fingers tightening around the edge. For a moment, Darren thought she wouldn't answer. But then, in a quiet, hesitant voice, she whispered, Risha. Darren smiled. Risha, that's a nice name. She glanced at him, unsure how to respond. He could see the distrust still in her eyes. Where are you from? He asked. Risha didn't answer. Instead, she lowered her gaze and focused on the soup. Darren sighed. Too soon. He didn't want to push her. All right, he said, leaning back. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But if you need a place to stay, you can stay here. Risha's eyes snapped up to him, full of shock. Darren stretched his arms and stood up. I'll set up the extra blanket on the couch. Risha kept staring at him, as if trying to understand his kindness. You saved my life, she whispered suddenly. Darren blinked. He hadn't expected her to speak again. He scratched his head. I just gave you some food. That's not much. Risha shook her head. It is, to me. Darren didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he just gave her a small smile. Well, get some rest, he said. We'll talk more tomorrow. As he turned to set up the blanket, he didn't see the way Risha watched him, as if, for the first time in a long while, she felt safe. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Risha woke up to the soft hum of machinery. For a moment, she panicked. Where was she? Her body tensed, her golden eyes darting around, searching for danger. But then she remembered. The human, the food, the warm place. She was in Darren's home. The small room looked different in the morning light. The walls were lined with tools, old engine parts, and half-finished devices. A large workbench sat in the corner, covered with metallic scraps and tangled wires. She turned her head slightly and saw Darren sitting by the workbench, fixing something. He hadn't noticed she was awake. His fingers moved quickly, tightening a screw on a metal panel. His eyes were focused, his expression calm. Risha had never seen a human work up close before. There was precision in his hands, an almost quiet determination. It was strange. Humans were loud and unpredictable. At least, that's what she had always been told. But Darren was different. Her stomach let out a small growl. Darren turned his head. "Oh, you're up." He grinned. "Guess that means it's breakfast time. A morning meal." Darren placed a plate on the table, eggs, bread, and a small fruit. Simple, but warm. Risha hesitated for only a second before sitting down. The memory of hunger was still too fresh. She picked up the bread, taking small, careful bites. Darren sat across from her, drinking from a steaming cup. "So, you planning to stay quiet forever?" Risha blinked. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to answer. Darren sighed. All right. I get it. You don't trust me yet." He leaned back. "Can't blame you." Risha studied him. He wasn't demanding answers from her. He wasn't forcing her to speak. He was waiting. She swallowed her bite. "You ask too many questions," she said softly. Darren smirked. "That's how humans are." She wasn't sure how to respond to that. A quiet understanding. After breakfast, Darren cleaned up while Risha sat near the window. Outside, the colony town of Orlin 5 was waking up. People moved through the streets, talking, trading, repairing machines. A strange feeling settled in her chest. She had always been on the outside, watching, always hiding, running, surviving. She had never imagined sitting inside a warm home, watching the world like an ordinary person. Darren interrupted her thoughts. "So, Risha, what's your plan?" She tensed. "You don't have one, do you?" Darren guessed. She shook her head slowly. Darren rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I don't know what you've been through, and I'm not gonna force you to tell me." He met her gaze. "But you can stay here, at least until you figure things out." Risha stared at him. Why? Why was he helping her? No one had ever done that before. "What do you want in return?" she asked. Darren raised an eyebrow. "Huh. You gave me food, shelter. Humans don't do things for free." Darren frowned. "I don't need anything." Risha narrowed her eyes. "Everyone needs something." Darren sighed. "All right. How about this? You help me with work around here. Nothing crazy, just small things. That way you don't feel like you owe me anything. Deal?" Risha hesitated. She wasn't sure why, but the idea of being useful made her feel lighter. "Deal," she finally said. Darren grinned. "Great. Now, let's see if you know how to use a wrench." A new beginning. As the day passed, Darren showed Risha small repair tasks. Fixing broken wires, tightening bolts, sorting tools. She learned quickly, her slender fingers surprisingly steady. At first, she was careful, afraid of making mistakes. But Darren never got angry. When she struggled, he laughed, explained, and let her try again. By the time the sun began to set, Risha felt different. Less like a burden, more like a person. As Darren locked up the shop for the night, he glanced at her. "Not bad for your first day." Risha looked down at her hands. They were dirty, covered in grease, but for some reason, she didn't mind. She nodded. "Not bad." Darren smirked. "See, you're already starting to sound like a mechanic." Risha rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. She still didn't fully trust him. She still didn't know what her future held. But for the first time, in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. Days passed, and Risha slowly settled into life at Darren's home. She still didn't talk much, but she worked hard. every morning. She helped in the repair shop, sorting tools, fixing small devices, and learning about human technology. Darren was patient, always explaining things in simple words. At night, she would sit by the window, watching the colony streets. Sometimes, Darren would talk to her about random things, his work, the strange customers he met, or the time he accidentally set a machine on fire. Risha never laughed, but she did smile once or twice. Darren noticed, but he didn't say anything. He figured she wasn't ready to admit she was starting to feel safe. But safety was an illusion. The stranger. One evening, as they were closing the shop, the doorbell rang. Darren frowned. They rarely got visitors this late. He wiped his hands on a cloth and opened the door. A man stood outside, a tall, rough-looking human with a scar across his cheek. His clothes were expensive, but his eyes were sharp and dangerous. Darren didn't like him immediately. "Can I help you?" Darren asked. The man's gaze flicked inside the shop, scanning everything. Then his eyes landed on Risha. She froze. The color drained from her face, and her hands gripped the worktable so tightly her fingers turned pale. Darren noticed. Something was wrong. The man smirked. "Didn't expect to find you here, girl," he said smoothly. "You've been causing quite the trouble." Risha didn't answer. She looked like she wanted to run. Darren stepped between them. "I don't know who you are, but if you've got business, talk to me." The man raised an eyebrow. "You don't know?" He chuckled. "Of course, you don't. She wouldn't tell you." Darren's jaw tightened. "Tell me what?" The man ignored him and looked at Risha. "Your little escape was impressive, but you knew we'd find you. So are you coming quietly, or do we have to do this the hard way?" Risha didn't move. Her breath was uneven, and her golden eyes flickered with fear. Darren's stomach twisted. Escape? Find her. Who was this man? He clenched his fists. "She's not going anywhere unless she wants to." The man sighed dramatically. Ah, the classic hero move. He smiled, but it was cold and amused. "Let me give you some advice. Mechanic, you don't want to get involved in this." Darren didn't move. "She stays," he said firmly. For the first time, the man's expression darkened. He studied Darren for a long moment, then let out a quiet chuckle. "All right, keep her for now. But remember," his eyes glinted dangerously, "people like her always bring trouble." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. The truth. The door closed, leaving behind a tense silence. Darren turned to Risha. Her hands were still shaking. "Risha," he said carefully. "Who was that?" She didn't answer. Darren took a slow breath. "Are you in danger?" Still, she said nothing. Darren rubbed his temples. He wasn't angry. He was worried. Someone had hunted her down and acted like she was some kind of escaped prisoner. He sat down across from her. "Look, I don't care what you did or where you came from," he said softly. "But if someone is after you, I need to know." Risha swallowed. Her hands curled into fists. "I ran away," she finally whispered. Darren waited. "I was taken from my home," she continued. "Forced to work. I escaped." Darren's fingers tightened against the table. She was a captive, a slave. "That man," Risha's voice was low. "He's one of the ones looking for me. If they find me again." She trailed off. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Darren exhaled. No wonder she was so scared. He looked at her serious expression. So tired, so guarded. "You don't have to run anymore," he said quietly. Risha's eyes snapped at him. Darren leaned forward. "I don't care who they are. If they come back, we'll deal with it. You're not alone anymore." Risha didn't speak, but something in her eyes softened. For the first time in a long time, she felt something strange. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, she finally had a place to belong. Darren couldn't sleep that night. He sat at his workbench, tool in hand, mind racing. The encounter with the scared man had left him uneasy. He had seen that type before, dangerous, confident, and not used to being told no. Risha was in danger, which meant he was too. He glanced toward the couch where she lay curled under a blanket, her breathing soft and steady. She had fallen asleep late, still shaken from what had happened. Darren sighed. What had he gotten himself into? He could have told her to leave, could have pretended this wasn't his problem. But he didn't, because deep down, he knew what it was like to be alone, to have no one. He turned back to the table and picked up a small metallic device. If trouble was coming, he needed to be ready. A morning decision. The next morning, Risha woke up to the smell of food. She sat up, her golden eyes scanning the room until they landed on Darren. He was by the small stove, flipping something on a pan. "You cook?" she asked, her voice still rough from sleep. Darren smirked. "I can make simple stuff. Don't expect anything fancy." He placed a plate on the table. Crispy bread, eggs, and something that smelled sweet. Risha hesitated for only a second before sitting down. She ate slowly, her mind still heavy with the events of last night. Darren sat across from her, his expression serious. "So, what's the plan?" Risha looked up. "Plan? That guy is coming back," Darren said. "And I don't like waiting for problems to find me. So, we need a plan." Risha stared at her plate. She had spent so long running. She had never thought about fighting back. She looked at Darren. "You're not scared?" Darren snorted. "Oh, I'm scared. I just don't like bullies." He leaned forward. "I don't care what these people want. They don't get to decide what happens to you. You do." Risha swallowed. It had been a long time since anyone had said something like that to her. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay, what do we do?" "The first lesson." Darren pushed aside the breakfast dishes and pulled out a small, modified energy pistol. Risha's eyes widened. "You have a weapon." Darren shrugged. "I fix machines. Sometimes people try to rob me. It's good to be prepared." He placed the pistol on the table and met her gaze. "You ever used one before?" Risha shook her head. Darren sighed. "Figures." He picked up the weapon and showed her the grip, the trigger, the safety switch. "It's not fancy, but it'll get the job done. If anyone comes after you, aim for center mass. Don't hesitate." Risha hesitated now. "What if I miss?" Darren gave her a small smile. "Then you shoot again." He handed the weapon to her. She took it carefully, her fingers tracing the metal. "Feel heavy?" he asked. She shook her head. It felt right. Darren nodded. "Good. Let's get you some practice." Target practice. Behind the shop, there was an open junkyard filled with broken machinery. It was the perfect place to train without drawing attention. Darren set up a few empty metal cans on a crate and stepped back. "All right, let's see what you got." Risha took a deep breath, raised the pistol, and fired. The shot missed completely. Darren chuckled. "Not bad for a first try." Risha frowned. "That was terrible." Darren shrugged. "You'll get better." He adjusted her stance, gently moving her arms into position. "Relax. Don't overthink. Just aim and shoot." Risha nodded, took another breath, and fired again. This time, the shot hit the crate. "Close." Darren grinned. "See, better already." Risha felt something strange. Not fear, not doubt. Confidence. She fired again. The can fell over. For the first time in a long time, she smiled. A dangerous future. As the sun began to set, Risha and Darren sat by the workbench, cleaning the pistol. Darren stretched his arms. "Well, I'd say that was a successful first lesson." Risha smirked. "I'll be better next time." Darren laughed. "That's the spirit." Then his smile faded. His voice turned serious. "Risha, I need you to be ready." Risha met his gaze. "I don't know when, but they're coming back. Darren said. And when they do, we fight. Risha nodded. I won't run this time. Darren smiled. Good. As the night settled over Orland 5, the two of them sat in silence. A mechanic and a runaway. But they were no longer just that. They were fighters. And when trouble came, they would be ready. The next few days passed in a tense silence. Risha continued training, waking up early to practice with the pistol in the junkyard. Darren gave her more lessons, not just shooting, but how to move, how to stay aware of her surroundings, how to think like a survivor. She was a fast learner. Darren had expected her to struggle, but Risha had sharp instincts. Her hands were steady, her movements quick. She wasn't just learning, she was preparing. Darren knew why. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting to never go back. An unexpected visitor. One afternoon, Darren was in the shop repairing an old hoverbike when the doorbell rang. He glanced at Risha. She immediately stepped back, reaching for her pistol. Darren gave her a small nod and walked to the door. He opened it and froze. An older woman stood outside. She had short gray hair, a worn-out coat, and tired eyes that had seen too much. Darren narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The woman sighed. I need to talk to the girl. Darren didn't move. Not happening. The woman looked past him and spotted Risha. Her expression softened. You're Risha, aren't you? She asked gently. Risha didn't answer. She just stared, her grip on the pistol tightening. The woman took a slow breath. Listen, child. I don't work for them, but I know them, and I know they'll come back. Darren's muscles tensed. How do you know her? The woman hesitated. I used to be like her. Risha's eyes widened. You escaped? The woman nodded. A long time ago. Darren studied her carefully. If you don't work for them, then why are you here? The woman sighed. Because I don't want to see another one of us taken back. She looked at Risha. You need to leave this place. Now. Running is not an option. Risha's heart pounded. Leave? She had just started to feel safe. She had finally stopped running. She clenched her fists. No. The woman's eyes widened. What? I said no, Risha repeated. She stood straighter. I'm done running. If they come, I'll fight. The woman's face filled with sorrow. Child, you don't understand. They don't stop. They don't give up. Even if you win today, they'll send more. They always do. Darren crossed his arms. Then we'll just have to make them regret it. The woman looked between them. You're serious? Risha nodded. Yes. The woman exhaled. Then at least be ready. They won't fight fair. They'll come in the dark. They'll come when you least expect it. Darren smirked. That's fine. We'll be waiting. The woman studied them for a moment, then reached into her coat and pulled out a small silver device. She handed it to Risha. This is a signal jammer. If they try to call for reinforcements, this will block them. Risha hesitated, then took it. Why are you helping us? The woman's eyes softened. Because someone once helped me. Without another word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowded streets. A silent night before the storm. That evening, Darren and Risha sat at the workbench, studying the jammer. This thing is impressive, Darren muttered, turning it over in his hands. If we use it right, it could give us a huge advantage. Risha nodded. She was right about one thing, though. Darren raised an eyebrow. Which part? They'll come when we least expect it. Darren smirked. Good thing we expect them all the time. Risha let out a small laugh, short, but real. For a moment, the two of them sat in silence. The shop felt warm, safe, but they both knew it wouldn't last. Somewhere in the shadows, trouble was coming, and when it did, they would be ready. The night was quiet, too quiet. Darren sat at his workbench, pretending to work on an old engine part, but his mind wasn't on the machine. It was on the danger outside. Risha sat near the window, her golden eyes scanning the dark streets. She had the signal jammer in her lap and her pistol strapped to her side. She was ready. They both knew it was only a matter of time. Then, just past midnight, it happened. The first move. The lights flickered. Darren and Risha froze. The power didn't go out completely, but it dimmed for a second, like something had interfered with the system. Darren swore under his breath. They were here. Risha immediately activated the jammer. A soft red light blinked on, signaling that any outside communication was now blocked. Darren grabbed his own pistol from under the workbench. "They'll come fast," he muttered. "We have to be faster." Risha nodded, her hand steady. Then, a loud crash. The front door exploded inward. The fight begins. Two figures rushed in, both armed, both moving like professionals. Risha didn't hesitate. She fired. The first shot hit the lead attacker in the shoulder. He grunted in pain and stumbled back. The second one raised his weapon. But Darren was already moving. Darren ducked behind the workbench and fired 3 quick shots. One hit the attacker's leg. He cried out and fell to the ground. Risha dashed toward the corner, taking cover behind a metal shelf. Her heart pounded, but her hand stayed steady. The first attacker, the one Risha had shot, growled in frustration. He raised his gun and aimed. Darren threw a wrench straight at his head. The man staggered, cursing. Risha took the chance and fired again. This time, the shot hit his leg. He dropped his weapon. Silence filled the room. The 2 attackers were down. Risha's breath came fast, her hand shaking slightly. Is it over? Darren frowned. No, because these men, they weren't the real threat. They were just the first wave. The real enemy arrives. Footsteps echoed outside. More of them, more than before. Then a familiar voice spoke. Impressive, the scared man from before said, stepping into the dim light. He was dressed in black, his eyes cold and amused. You actually put up a fight. Didn't think you had it in you. Darren tightened his grip on his pistol. I told you before, she's not going anywhere. The man smirked. And I told you before, this isn't your fight. He snapped his fingers. From the shadows, 4 more men stepped forward, weapons ready. Risha swallowed hard. This was bad. Darren exhaled. Guess we'll have to do this the hard way. The scared man grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. A desperate escape. The first shot came from the enemy side. Darren dove behind a crate as a pulse round smashed into the workbench, sending sparks flying. Risha rolled behind a shelf, raising her pistol and firing back. But there were too many. One of the attackers threw a smoke grenade. The shop filled with thick, gray fog. Risha coughed, her vision blurring. She could hear footsteps moving closer. They were surrounding them. Darren grabbed her wrist. We have to get out. Risha hesitated, but no time. Darren yanked open a side hatch, a small escape tunnel leading to the back alley. They slipped inside just as a gunshot shattered the window behind them. Running through the night, they ran. Fast. The streets were dark, but Darren knew the city well. He led Risha through narrow alleys, past abandoned buildings, through the industrial district. Behind them, the enemy was following. Risha panted. We can't outrun them forever. Darren gritted his teeth. We won't have to. He pulled her into a hidden maintenance tunnel, pushing a heavy metal door shut behind them. Silence. They waited. Footsteps echoed nearby, but they didn't stop. Then, nothing. The enemy had lost them. For now. A new plan. Darren exhaled. We can't go back. Risha wiped sweat from her forehead. Then where do we go? Darren's mind raced. His home, his shop, everything was gone. They had only barely survived tonight. They needed help. He looked at Risha. That woman, the one who warned us. We need to find her. Risha hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Because now, this wasn't just about running. It was about fighting back. And they weren't going to fight alone. Darren and Risha walked through the quiet industrial district, sticking to the shadows. The city of Orland 5 never truly slept, but at this hour, the streets were mostly empty. Risha's body ached from the night's battle. Her legs felt heavy, her arms sore, but she forced herself to keep going. Stopping was not an option. Darren led the way, glancing over his shoulder every few minutes. No sign of pursuit. For now. They had one goal: find the woman who had warned them. She had escaped from the same people hunting Risha. That meant she knew things. And right now, they needed every advantage they could get. Finding the contact. After nearly an hour of walking, Darren finally stopped in front of a rundown building. The sign above was faded, but the words were still visible. Mecha Parts and Repairs. Risha raised an eyebrow. She runs a repair shop. Darren smirked. Smart cover. Mechanics don't attract attention. He knocked on the door. 3 sharp taps. Silence. Then, a soft voice came from inside. Who's there? Darren leaned in. It's us. You warned us. We need help. A pause. Then the door unlocked. It opened just a little, and the woman from before peered out. Her tired eyes studied them carefully. She looked surprised. You're still alive, she muttered. Yeah, Darren said, but that won't last long if we don't do something. The woman sighed and opened the door fully. Get in. Quickly. A hard truth. Inside, the shop looked just like Darren's old place. Tools, broken machines, and the smell of oil. The woman locked the door behind them and motioned toward an old table. Sit. Darren and Risha didn't argue. The woman took a deep breath. You made the wrong choice by fighting them. Darren frowned. We didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, the woman said. She leaned against the wall, her expression unreadable. But now, you're on their list, and that means you're in more danger than you realize. Risha clenched her fists. Then tell us what we don't realize. The woman hesitated. Then she pulled up a small holographic device and placed it on the table. A projection flickered to life. It showed a symbol, a dark red insignia, shaped like a sharp claw. Risha felt her stomach drop. That's their mark. The woman nodded. They're not just a group of bounty hunters. They're part of a bigger organization, one that deals in stolen people. Darren's jaw tightened. Slavers. The woman looked at Risha. And you're special to them, aren't you? Risha looked away. The woman sighed. They won't stop. Even if you kill one group, another will come. Darren ran a hand through his hair. So what do we do? The woman looked at them for a long time. Then she said, we destroy them first. A dangerous plan. Risha's eyes widened. You mean, fight them, not just escape. The woman nodded. If you run, they chase you forever. If you fight, you make them afraid to come after you again. Darren folded his arms. You sound like you've done this before. The woman smirked. Let's just say you're not the first people I've helped. Risha frowned. But how do we fight them? They have numbers, weapons, everything. The woman turned the hologram off. Not everything. They have weak points. She pointed at the corner of the shop, where a dusty old terminal sat. I have information. Names. Locations. Supply chains. If we hit them the right way, we don't have to fight all of them, just the right people. Darren raised an eyebrow. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? The woman smiled. Like I said, you're not the first. The first target. The woman walked over to the terminal and pulled up a map of the city. She pointed to a warehouse near the docks. This is where they process their cargo before shipping them off-world, she explained. If we destroy it, we cut off a major part of their operation. Risha's hands curled into fists. How do we do it? The woman's eyes gleamed. Explosives. Darren whistled. Well, that's one way to send a message. The woman grinned. They made a mistake coming after you. Now, we make them regret it. A new mission. For the first time since this all began, Risha felt something new. Hope. She wasn't just running anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was fighting back. Darren leaned back and smirked. All right, let's bring them some trouble. The woman nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we start a war. And as the night passed, Risha knew this was only the beginning. The morning air was cold. The industrial district was quiet, but in the shadows, war was about to begin. Darren checked his pistol and took a deep breath. Risha stood beside him, tightening the straps on her gear. Their new ally, Mira, the woman who had helped them, loaded a small pack of explosives. Their target, the warehouse. It was the place where the enemy stored their captured people before selling them off-world. If they destroyed it, they wouldn't just escape. They would end the threat once and for all. Infiltration. The warehouse was heavily guarded. Armed patrols, security drones, and reinforced doors. Darren crouched behind a stack of metal crates, watching the enemy move. We need a way in. Mira smirked and held up a small device. Give me a few seconds. She pressed a button, and suddenly, the security lights flickered. The guards looked around, confused. What's going on? One of them muttered. Then, the lights went out completely. Now, Mira whispered. Darren and Risha moved fast, silent, deadly. They slipped past the distracted guards, making their way toward the main entrance. Mira hacked into the control panel, and with a quiet beep, the door slid open. They were inside, planting the explosives. The warehouse was massive. Metal cages lined the walls, but they were empty. Risha's heart clenched. We're too late. The people are gone. Mira cursed under her breath. Then we make sure no one else gets taken. They moved through the dark halls, setting small explosives at the building's weak points. Darren placed the last one near a large fuel tank. This should do it. Risha nodded. Now, we just need tow. An alarm blared. Into your ears. The fight begins. Doors slammed open. Guards poured in. Risha ducked as bullets whizzed past her head. She rolled behind a crate and fired back. Darren took down two men with quick, precise shots. Mira threw a smoke grenade, filling the air with thick fog. Go, she shouted. They ran toward the exit, dodging gunfire. But then, the scared man appeared, the same man who had hunted them from the beginning. He smirked, holding a heavy rifle. You really thought you could win. Darren raised his pistol. I still do. The scared man laughed. Then let's end this. The final duel. The fight was fast. Brutal. Darren fired first. The scared man dodged. The enemy fired back. Darren barely avoided the shot. Risha aimed at him, but he was too quick. Then, the scared man rushed forward, grabbing Darren by the collar and slamming him against the wall. You should have walked away, he growled. Darren gritted his teeth. You should have left us alone. With all his strength, he headbutted the man. The scared man stumbled back. Risha took the chance. She fired. The shot hit his arm. He dropped his gun, eyes wide in shock. Mira grinned. Oops. She held up a detonator. Bye-bye, warehouse, she said, and pressed the button. Escape and victory. The building shook. Explosions ripped through the walls, flames bursting out. Darren, Risha, and Mira ran. Behind them, fire consumed the warehouse. The scared man screamed in anger, but his voice was lost in the chaos. They escaped into the night, the city lights ahead of them. Risha turned to look at the destruction. They did it. The warehouse, the heart of the enemy's operation, was gone. Darren sighed. Is it over? Mira smirked. For now. A new beginning. Later, they stood on a rooftop, watching the sunrise. Risha leaned against Darren. "So, what now?" Darren smiled. "We keep moving, keep fighting, keep living." Mira stretched. "You two make a good team. Ever think about bounty hunting?" Darren chuckled. "I think we've had enough trouble for one lifetime." Risha smiled softly. "But if trouble finds us again, we'll be ready." As the sun rose over Orland 5, they knew this wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something new.